Hi everyone, welcome to the Middlebury Center for Social Entrepreneurship Friday Reflection Series, where we ask guests to reflect about the question of what matters to you and why. Before we dive in with Gaby, just wanted to let everyone know that on Friday, April 8th, so the Friday after we get back from spring break, Professor Nadia Horning will be up here talking about what matters to her and why. So today we have Gaby Fuentes, a good friend of mine, and I asked her, when I was literally trying to figure out this introduction maybe 10 minutes ago, how did we meet? And we don't really know how we met. But I'll always remember last summer, it was my birthday in New York, and Gaby came all the way from way out in Queens to the apartment I was living out in the East Village in Manhattan. And when I saw her show up, I was like, I cannot believe, like of all the people that are here right now, this probably took the longest. So I guess shows Gaby's character and her...
And it was a blast.
And it was a blast. And then a few weeks ago, in the beginning of the semester, Gaby gave me the encouragement I needed to take 3 classes. So all those things just show a little bit of how I come to know Gaby over the course of our 4 years here. So without further ado, Gaby, tell us.
And thank you, Winston, for agreeing to interview me and be here. So thanks everyone for being here. To start, the question to start this talk series is what matters to you and why. And for me, that's every morning that's the question I ask myself, right? And I think that's the question I ask myself throughout the day. And of course, things change, things grow, things develop, and just like life, it's not a stagnant response. So what I say today is, all my life experiences up to now, and if you see me in 5 years, you ask me what matters to you and why, it's going to be a different response, hopefully, and that just shows that we grow and we experience new things every day. But before I begin, I just want to make sure that everyone is feeling comfortable, and you guys are these chairs could be a little stuffy and stiff, and everyone's eating. Please feel free to get up, go to the bathroom, get water. If there's something I say that you resonate with, feel free to respond, whatever. I want this to be an interaction, and I want this to be a communal space. That's really important for me, and really just prioritize your needs in this space for yourself, and that's going to reflect kind of what I'll be saying throughout this talk. So the first thing I want to say is I hope you never have to compartmentalize yourself, and I hope you never ask anyone to compartmentalize themselves on your behalf. And this is what matters to me, to understand that I and we as people are whole beings, and we're oftentimes asked to suppress aspects of ourselves in certain spaces. Some of us are asked to do that more than others. It's based on where we are, our environment, who we're around, the level of risk that we have in spaces. And I know that's a very abstract thought, but one example I told Winston when we were talking about, what am I going to talk about on Friday? I don't know. We had breakfast this week. It was really nice. I talked about like a child who didn't have a good breakfast in the morning, or me when I wake up late and I don't have a good breakfast before my class, right? And I'm sitting in class and I am so aware that I haven't eaten, but I try to suppress that. And I'm no, I just need to focus and I need to pay attention to this lecture or participate in this lab. But we are whole beings, and our academic selves function as a result of our physical selves, as our emotional, spiritual selves. And for me, that's super important to be aware of all those aspects, because they intersect, they lead into each other, and for me, that spaces in which I've been able to be my full self have been the most rewarding, have been the most community building spaces. And for me, you know, creating that sense of community is really significant. And the second component to that is don't ask others to compartmentalize on your behalf is really significant too, because you know, we live in a world where our identities, our life, our experiences, you know, they don't exist in a vacuum. We are people who are always connected to others. Our environment, our space, and the way it nourishes us or doesn't nourish us results in these power dynamics, right? So I have an older brother, for instance, so growing up, it was like very known in my household that he was the older brother, right? And I needed to respect that. But he never asked me to compartmentalize like certain aspects of my independence because he was an older sibling. And I really respect him for that. Even though, like for instance, my parents would kind of impose that on me, right? So being aware of those power dynamics and being aware of where we stand in relation to other people is super significant. Because, you know, we all want to be liberated people, right? We all want to be able to express the way we're feeling in whatever space. Like, I wish that sometimes, like, if I'm having a bad day and I walked into a classroom and someone asked me, how are you? I wish I didn't have to give the generic, like, oh, I'm doing well, I'm fine. Like, oh, you know, the weather's great out, you know? But that is the response that we often give, right? But if we lived in a world where we didn't ask others to compartmentalize themselves, we would be having genuine conversations and genuine connection, and I think we would see a lot more community, we would see a lot more just equity and beauty. Not to say that there isn't beauty in this world or whatnot, but I do think that component is really significant, and it's something that is an everyday process, right? Because we can't rid ourselves of that. Because there's external pressures, there's pressures that we put on ourselves.
Yeah. So you're talking about external pressures and people asking you to compartmentalize. How do you, like, what do you think you need as an individual to feel like you're your whole self and to feel like you're not compartmentalizing all these different things? Like if you had like 3 things or something that help you integrate yourself, what would they be? Why?
Yeah, that's something I've been thinking about a lot this year, being a senior, and just, you know, trying to figure out what are my next steps, the relationships that I've made here, like how are they going to carry out into this new transitional phase that I'll be in. And for me, it's really about kind of stopping and giving myself time and space to reflect. Like there are so many days where I'm just like going from one thing to another, like a meeting to class to this to that. I don't have like 5 minutes to stop and like check in with myself. So I think allowing myself to do that is really important. For instance, like this week I downloaded like 2 meditation apps. I know it's really cheesy, but they send me reminders, and it's like, okay, I haven't had a moment to like breathe or stop, and like I need to take like 3 minutes right now and check in with myself. And it's amazing the things that I realized, like yesterday I realized that I had like a really sore neck, and I was like, what? Maybe it's because I was tense all day, or, you know, I realized like I didn't drink enough water today, I'm feeling a little dehydrated. And so it's little things that really contribute to the way you interact with others and the way you feel, and your mood. That is really important. And I guess another thing I would say is also acknowledging that you don't exist in a vacuum. Like I think interacting with other people, learning about other people's experiences, and just being really open to learning from others is really important to me. On Monday, I participated in a workshop with Professor Jonathan Miller-Lang. I don't know if you all know him, but he's great. It was a social justice and mindfulness workshop that he held at the Emerson Freeman Resource Center. And only 2 students showed up, including myself. But that was actually really nice, because I hadn't seen him in a while, and it was nice to catch up with him. And he shared this beautiful quote, and I'm probably gonna misquote it, but it had something to do with when you're engaged in social justice issues, to change the world around you, to be an intervener of the world around you, you need to take into account your internal state. So I guess, I don't think I said that correctly, but I think what he was trying to say was your efforts are as powerful as your awareness of yourself. And that was really beautiful for me. And like, I've been thinking about that quote all week, because it's like, you know, I may be involved with a lot of things like the CSE or the AFC and things on campus, but if I'm not aware of my needs and if I'm not aware of where I stand, my contributions aren't gonna be sustainable. And I need to be aware of my role and how to best nourish myself to be able to give as much as I can. Yeah, and it just reminds me in preparation for this talk, you know, I wrote at the top of the page what matters to me and why. And I told Winston, I was like, this is super narcissistic, but I put me in the center. And for me, that was really powerful, and it was like, it was an intentional narcissism, because I think growing up, or just, I don't know, being a woman, being Latina, being a younger sibling, whatever it may be, it was almost not allowed to put me as like what matters first, right? Like, you're always giving to other people. And I think, for instance, like I think I grew up seeing my mom do that, right? Like, my mom would always give so much to like me and my brother, and not necessarily prioritize herself all the time. And people learn that, right? They learn that process. It's a learned behavior. You give to others before you give to yourself, but no, I think it's appropriate and necessary to, you know, fuel yourself. Someone else has told me, you know, you can't give others to drink if your cup is empty. And I think that's super important too. You need to nourish yourself. But not to say that nourishing others isn't nourishing for yourself too, right? So when my mom would lose sleep because she would help my brother and I with a school project or whatever it may be, I think that act of love was fueling her simultaneously in many ways. And that's a thing I, you know, really think about often.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful image of like, you know, feeling fueled by what you do for other people, but also recognizing that you need to fuel yourself. I think when I'm talking to you and I'm listening to you, it seems like you're very aware, not just like of the self, but also aware of like how things interact within a community or network, and like you said this many times, of like you don't exist in a vacuum. Like the insides of yourself don't exist in a vacuum, but also we don't exist in a vacuum when there's so many other people. And I was wondering, in your paying attention to how things interact with each other, what can you say about like this idea of compartmentalization at Middlebury? And like, what can you say about, you know, ourselves in this room and our community? Like, what do you think about that, and where do we go with that?
I think it's really fascinating. I think at Middlebury, I've been super aware of ways in which I compartmentalize myself, but I've also been given the biggest freedom in talking about it and engaging with it. For instance, like, in the classroom, there's such a pressure to perform and to, you know, you have to be on top of all your academic stuff and whatnot, and you have to be, you know, doing research and this and that. But at the same time, I do think being at a liberal arts college, being a posse scholar, whatever it may be, I've been granted so many spaces and privileges where I can talk about, you know, this is a challenging week for me because of this, and I've had so much wonderful support here. So I think, one, that's a huge privilege to be able to step back and say like, oh, I'm compartmentalizing myself and it's challenging and I need support in this way. And I've been fortunate to meet a lot of faculty who have been very supportive and have given up, their time to support me in those ways. But I do think that, that was a really good question. I'm thinking a lot about this. I do think it's really hard to straddle, personally, my home community and Middlebury. And I know you said Middlebury, but again, because I don't just exist here, that aspect has been really hard. Understanding myself here and understanding how I operate here, varies. And the way I operate at home is pretty different too. And I'm starting to think that we aren't just, we aren't the same person, if that makes sense. Like, who I am here at Middlebury is kind of different than who I am at home, or is pretty different than who I am with a certain group of friends, and that's okay. I don't think it's necessarily me being like fake or being, catering to the environment I'm in, but people give you energy that is different based on space, based on experience, and the love and support and energy my mother gives me is different than the love and energy that a friend here may give me. And it's, one isn't better than the other, it's just different. And I think that's something else I told you, embracing difference is another thing that I've been really kind of, prioritizing here. And I think that is where compartmentalization comes into play. Here at Middlebury, we have such an awkward time with difference. Like, we all want to be mid-kids, and we all want to be like, we're all mid-kids, it's okay, but we are different, and we come from very different experiences, and that's okay. And to be comfortable with that, and to acknowledge it, and to embrace it has been a huge challenge for this campus, I think. And not that difference is synonymous to unequal or inequity, right? Because I think that's when these conversations get conflated, like, oh, I am different from that person, and when we talk about privilege, and when we talk about, all these conversations that have been happening on campus with racism, cultural appropriation, whatever it may be, there is a difference between inequity, privilege, and difference. And I think for our campus to be able to identify those differences and to be able to define those and distinguish among them is a challenge.
Yeah.
And I think I'm moving away from your original question.
I think you're taking us in an interesting direction. Can you help us understand what you think of that as, how you distinguish between difference, privilege, and inequity?
Yeah, so I think it goes back to compartmentalization, right? So, I don't know, being a student from Chicago and being here at Middlebury, that alone is a challenge, right? I don't know mountains, the Chicago, I know the Chicago skyline, like when I came here I was like, the Green Mountains, what? Okay, people hike here, I don't know what that is. I went snowboarding for the first time this J term, or when did we go? Oh, you didn't go, that's right, you didn't go. And for instance, okay, I guess what I'm trying to say is being in this environment was extremely new for me, right? And I had a lot of learning to do and a lot of new experiences to go through. But there were ways in which, for instance, ways in which I was kind of categorized or compartmentalized here in certain spaces that wasn't necessary. For instance, I've had several instances in classrooms where I have been called another Latina's name, right? And it's especially if it comes from a professor or faculty member, to me that just speaks you're not looking at me as an individual, and if you're grading assignments that I'm giving to you, or you are perceiving my participation in class and attributing that to another person, that's a problem, because I'm here to get an education, and if I don't know how you're basing my grade, that's weird,
Yeah.
right? And that I think that's unfair, because I think I was putting in the work in certain classes or interactions, and it was being misattributed, right? And I think that's where difference comes, right? Because in that faculty members, because it's been more than one, mind, I was different and lumped into this other, right? So it was easy to attribute my name or my identity to another person. That, I don't know if it affected any of my grades or anything like that, but if it did, that's wrong, right? I think. And I think that's where all these difference and inequity and things come into play, and these small interactions that I was talking about. Like, we all have power in our interactions. There are power dynamics at play. There are ways in which we ask people to morph themselves into a being that's comfortable for us to digest, right? So I'm trying to think of another example. I don't think I'm doing the best job right now doing that, but I don't know. I think so many times when I ask someone like, "How are you doing?" I'm guilty of it too. You know, do I really want to know how you're doing? Do I really have to, like, I'm running to a meeting in 20 minutes. Do I have the time to sit with you if you've had a bad morning? Probably not, right? And that is really unfortunate. Like, and that's that is a way that I also play into this, right? Like, I don't know. I could also probably take a step back and maybe not engage as much with some of my extracurriculars and give more time to my friends and family. You know, I could check in with more people. I could be a support system in a more genuine way. And again, I think I'm straying away from this difference thing, because it's also really messy. I also don't know.
Yeah.
I also don't know. At the end of the day, I'm also going through this process. Like, what is unequal? What is inequity? How am I an agent in that? Because I am, right? I think we all are. We're all agents in this thing called life, in this messy thing that is finally coming to surface on this campus. And it's always existed here, right? These notions of difference and the way in which students engage with them and faculty and just everyone here does. And I think for me, the most frustrating part about conversations recently, specifically the ones around the campus and the articles that have been posted saying racist comments, the most frustrating part for me is not so much what has been said, but the communal response to it. And I've said this before, like, if everyone picked up the newspaper, read something ignorant and dismissed it as if it held no weight, that would show me, like, wow, I'm in a community that supports me. I'm in a community that denounces these things, and that's okay. There's one person here who has a great deal of learning to do. But when there are people who actively support these ideas and these notions, and people from all, you know, grades and all different types of backgrounds, it just shows me, like, what community do we live in, and how are we engaging or not engaging these people?
How does that make you feel when you you go on Yik Yak and you can see a whole bunch of things about the community that are anonymous? But how does that, as an individual, make you feel about the community that we live in?
I'm a senior, and I think I've been trying to, this whole 4 years, trying to make Middlebury a part of home, right? Because Chicago is no longer home for me in certain ways, and in a good way. You know, I've grown, I've experienced new things, and it's not completely home. And I think seeing that also makes me want to distance myself from Middlebury and be like, this also isn't home. This space in many ways does not reflect the values. And this space, what is this space, right? What is Middlebury College? Middlebury College is an institution, and the people who work, live, attend here make up Middlebury, right? So I can find home within people, within communities here, but as a holistic being, probably not, and that's okay. I think that's okay. And I think, it makes me a little weary. It actually makes me kind of excited, and also, I'm excited to see where Middlebury will be in a few years from now. I think being a senior and kind of being, out the door in many ways, it's disappointing that we're still having these conversations and these things still come up where I remember my first year, similar things happening, instances of racism or sexism or just hatred. And thinking like, wow, why couldn't it have been fixed by now? But it's not a fixable thing. Again, it's a process. And I'm excited to see, the underclassmen engage with these issues. And I'm excited to come back one day and just see the engagement and the efforts that students put into this, I'm really happy that we have the Emerson Improvement Resource Center now on campus. I remember being a freshman and never imagining a space like that ever existing. I never thought that could be a thing. So there are small ways. I also think that as a Western society, as Americans, we love to think about the world or just life in terms of progress. Like, we're always getting better every day. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think life is murky, and it's not always in a linear, progressive fashion. You take 2 steps forward, you take 3 back, and that's okay. I think that's where the most growing happens. I think that's when you don't compartmentalize yourself to be fixated on I need to get from A to B. That's when you learn so much about yourself and who's around you. And I don't know, that's really important to me, to not look at the world as like, oh, I'm getting better every day, but no, I'm getting more complex every day. I'm learning more and meeting new people.
I want to make sure that we open it up questions. Well, I have a lot of questions, but I'm not be selfish, and I want other people to have the time and the space to talk and to converse. As like Gaby said, it's like, do what makes you feel comfortable. Do you want to get water? Anyone need to use the restroom? Anyone need to shake? Your feet fall asleep. I haven't seen all the time. Yeah.
Gaby, can you talk about a single moment or experience in your 4 years at Middlebury that has mattered a lot to you, whether it's a really positive moment or a less happy moment? Just a single moment that has mattered to how you think of yourself or what your time here will mean to you moving away from it?
Okay.
It doesn't have to be a tiny moment. Like, it could be like a whole semester moment. But.
I'm thinking. Sorry.
Come back to it. Go to, somebody has like a favorite color question.
What is your favorite color?
Green.
Me too.
Yes. Light green.
I like all greens.
Oh, green is beautiful. I don't wear it often though. I don't know why. People think my favorite color is like red. I wear like a lot of burgundy red color, but it's all about the green. Yeah. Yes, Miss.
Yeah, I guess this is another question that you can put in your park zone, but I was thinking about what lessons will you take from Middlebury about what to do and not to do in terms of fostering any form of inclusivity?
what lessons do I take away in terms of how to or not to foster? Sorry.
Yeah, to do's and not to do's. Again, it can be one of each, but just like this big idea lessons in whatever form it is, right? Whether it is in when you choose or choose not to have kids and how to make sure they all play nicely with each other, or when you're in a working space and there's someone new from a different culture, from a different
Yeah.
sexuality, just to do's and not to do's, and you will take away from your experience over here in Middlebury.
Yeah. For me, it's I like to start from me first and then go out to like community, and I say that because, like I said, like Middlebury is an institution, right? The people who make up Middlebury as individuals then make up this holistic being, and there are certain ways we can shift these little like power dynamics, these little things, these little structures within ourselves and with other people to foster a more inclusive environment, I think. So if I am more aware of who I am and the privileges or lack thereof that I've been granted in life, I then know how to talk to Winston and relate to him in the sense that like we've talked about family a lot and about the way, you know, our family experiences are very different, but also very, did I say different or similar? Similar and different.
Similar, yeah.
In many ways, right? And I think inclusivity in its essence is when you acknowledge a person for all that they are. And again, don't ask them to compartmentalize. And there are structural ways that happens, you know, just making a building accessible is a very structural, material, tangible way in which we make this world accessible or not. And then it's also just acknowledging a person's existence, right? Like making sure you call your student by their right name, saying, I see you in this classroom, I acknowledge that you are here, will really determine how they engage with the material you're teaching them, with you, with other students in the classroom. So, I don't know, I think when you know who you are and how, where you stand in relation to other people, that's like the first step. And in terms of Middlebury specifically, I think I've experienced the most, I've been challenged the most here to talk about inclusivity, to face like notions of inclusivity and others of sheer lack thereof, and being able to have these conversations, and you actually asking me that, I feel like, and being able to reflect on that is like a process in itself. And I think that we're fortunate to have these conversations on campus. And yeah, I don't know, I'm a little abstract with that, but I'm still thinking about it. Katie, I want to respond to your question, and I'm still thinking, I have so many awesome moments and here at Mid, and I think, I don't know, I can't think of one specifically. I do think having the AFC is a big one for me. Just the sense of community there.
So when I think about the question of what matters to you and why, you know, think about what you're also grateful for. And when you leave Middlebury and you look back at your 4 years at Middlebury, wondering what things will you say, wow, I'm so grateful that happened. And maybe some of the challenges that you've really been wrestling with, or these amazing friendships and relationships you've formed, or maybe just thoughts you've had. So maybe if you can speak to that a little bit.
What I'm grateful for. Here at Middlebury specifically, you'd say?
Yeah, like if you were to look back at your 4 years of Middlebury 5 years from now, what might come to your mind?
I'm grateful for, one, just being able to be at Middlebury, but even more broadly, be in college. Like that I'm really grateful for that. I think I'm really grateful for for people's curiosity here. And I don't think it's unique to Middlebury. Like I think sometimes we put Middlebury students on this really bizarre pedestal. Like we're the only inquisitive people in the whole world. And we're really like curious, but no, that's no. And I say that in conjunction with like being grateful for being in college, because I have a lot of friends back home who maybe aren't in college but are just as inquisitive and just as awesome, if not more in certain ways, than like certain mid kids here, right? And it's like I won a lottery because I do think that yes, I worked hard to get here, but I don't think that meritocracy is real. It's not. Like people win this lottery to come to spaces like this, to engage in these conversations, to really have these, like, this room is beautiful, right? Like this amount of like wealth and knowledge, wealth in every aspect. And I'm grateful to experience this, but I'm also grateful to acknowledge that this isn't everyone's reality. And I think other students have taught me that here. Other students from, experiences different than mine or similar than mine, and being able to understand how, all our journeys are unique, and the way we live here and see this world is unique. Is great, and I think I really appreciate Middlebury students Middlebury students and faculty, because I've met some incredible faculty here and staff members as well, who have really just taken the time to teach me about themselves or teach me about the way they see the world. And that is what I'm super grateful for, having these conversations. I'm grateful for Noonies. They have really good yeah. And I'm grateful for Middlebury in certain ways allowing me to bring aspects of myself and home and making them real. Like, one little thing is like the Café con Leche event that happens every now and then. It's like a Latinx event. When I first got here freshman year, I was like, what is this fist pumping dance that people do? I don't do that. Whereas like the Spanish music and stuff, and being able to implement that event and make it a communal space has been super rewarding. And I think that also maybe answers your question too, Katie. Café con Leche events are so much fun. Mm-hmm. And they're little things, but they're ways in which this has been a space of community and comfort for me. Yeah.
So I'm kind of new to all of this, and we've been having a lot of conversations lately, and I've been noticing how people approach these conversations already say no. And I guess my question is, how do you encourage people, or how do you let people know that, even if we do disagree, because that's probably going to happen, how do you allow them to come without leaving part of them, or without having to leave part of yourself out of the conversation, and encourage them to have these conversations? Because I've been having an issue with that.
It's hard. It's messy. I don't think I have an answer for that, but I admire your engagement. Nia's awesome, y'all. If y'all don't know her, she's a awesome first year. And I applaud you for having those conversations, because they are tough, and it's much easier to avoid any type of awkward conversation where you might get disrespected in the process, right? But I think as long as you prioritize your well-being, make sure you aren't being disrespected, and that's, I don't know, there's a great Nina Simone quote that says, when love isn't being served, or what's it called, leave the table when love is no longer being served. As long as you engage in these conversations with love and with intention of a better space, a better Middlebury community, you're good. But when you don't have the energy to do that, that's okay. When someone isn't giving the effort that you are giving in that conversation, it's okay to walk away. I encourage you to. And it's messy. I don't have a response. But you will have really meaningful conversations. You will have conversations here that will probably piss you off, and that's okay. This is what it means to be part of a community, I think. Like, if you care about something, you will be critical about it. You will engage with it, and that's what we were talking about too. We were like Winston and I were talking about family and religion and like religious dogma, and like you love family, so you engage with them. You may not always agree with them. They may disrespect you in certain ways, but you stay there and you have those difficult conversations because you care, right? And I don't know, acknowledging that is important.
So you've mentioned love several times. Your mom's love for you and your brother, in a way that I think we could all see in the way you shared it, but also understand in terms of love for a parent and child. And then you've taken Nia's question and brought love in, and that intrigues me a lot. Let's say Middlebury starts to get some things better in the next few years. And this is like an abstract question, but you're good at abstractions.
Yes. That's all I do.
Yeah. So let's say if you were to look forward 5 years, Gaby, and Middlebury was doing better in terms of, I'm going to use a particular phrase, like bringing love in. Bringing love in. What would be happening on this campus if we just were doing better in terms of bringing love?
We would not be ranking ourselves nationally as like the top liberal arts college with the top students. I think when like I said, I think Middlebury College loves hyping itself up so much. Students here, faculty here, the programs we have here, and yes, I think we need to applaud all the amazing work that we do on this campus, but we need to do it in a more humble way. I think we need to recognize that the reason why we're ranked so high is because we have a lot of resources and money, old money and connections here, I think. And to acknowledge that, like, this exists. This is the, this is the product of all of this historical things we come from. I think if Middlebury were more inclusive, had more love, we wouldn't put a number, and that could be a fiscal number, like a dollar sign, that could be a ranking, that could be number of students that are doing this and this and that. And it's funny because we live in a world that's how things get done, right? We put a number of them, we put a ranking, we put a percentage, we put something. But when we put less value into that, we can acknowledge one another as individuals and actually let that love to foster in a more genuine way. So again, I don't know if I have a clear response to that, but I think also just allowing people to be vulnerable and emotional in every space here, in a classroom, in an interaction. Like if I ask you how your day is, to genuinely be open to having you respond in a way that maybe I'm not prepared for. That I think is how love can really permeate. Because it's about giving up a little bit of your comfort for the well-being of someone else, right? If I'm not prepared for you to say I had a terrible morning, like this happened, and for you to cry in front of me, maybe I need to take a step back and say maybe this is like how I can serve this person, right? And that's the love that I would be giving, and it's all about, I don't know if that answered your question.
I think I understand what you mean by the compartmentalization of the self, but if you could just like explain it again or something, like, because I'm just a little bit lost as well.
Yeah, it's all my abstract words. So I think about it like this. So I dance on campus. I'm part of the Evolution Dance group. Yay! So we have like long rehearsals, sometimes I'm sore, sometimes I'm really tired because we have late rehearsals, right? And I have to be in a classroom the next morning at like 9 in the morning. And, you know, I have to perform in that classroom. I have to make sure I have done the readings and that I'm participating in class. But if my world were ideal, if my world were perfect, I would be able to do all these things. I would be able to get 8 hours of sleep and still dance and still contribute to, you know, my academics in a way that didn't feel so stressful and so pressured. And what I mean by that is you shouldn't have to ignore your emotional state, your mental state, your physical state, your spiritual state if you're spiritual. I'm very spiritual. In any space that you enter. If you are, you know, it's all about creating. I don't think balance is the right word. I'm trying to move away from this idea of balance because I don't think it's real. But I don't know if I'm giving a good response to this, but for instance, if you walk into a meeting with a faculty member about a paper, but your mind is on something that's going on at home, let's say you had an argument with a sibling or a parent, I don't know, I think if we are at an institution that prides itself on building community and really prioritizing that, you should be able to walk into that faculty member's office and say, like, can we reschedule, like, I'm going through this, or can we have a conversation about this before we go into this paper, if you feel comfortable with that person, right? But ways in which we suppress aspects of ourselves to perform, I guess is what I mean by the compartmentalization. Like we should do that a little less. Because of course we live in a world where that demand is always going to be there. Suppress this aspect of you so you can perform well here. But if we could do that a little less, this place would be a little better.
So, ever since I met you when you were first year, I've really been struck by your kind of the care that you put into your commitments and the like deep kind of profound dive that you take into whatever you commit to. And I think in some ways that's part of you and who you are as a person, but I think we're operating in a context and a culture here where students do overcommit a lot, or they don't feel comfortable saying no or letting go of some of their activities on campus. And it speaks to a little bit about the reality of you'd like to go in and be honest about who you are and express that vulnerability. But I'm wondering, you have this deep level of reflection and self-knowledge that you bring to the table, and I'm wondering if you could share with others what you found as helpful resources on campus, or where you found the courage sometimes to say no. You know, if I'm asking Gabby to go to the local high school with me and she just says this isn't a great week, how can others kind of take that behavior on a little bit more and figure out how to go deeper? Or maybe that's not the right route, but I'm just wondering how you found comfort in doing that in a context in which we're not saying less is more that often.
Yeah. Saying no it like leaves my vocabulary sometimes. And I need to like fish it back in. Often. So I think I have really struggled with being overcommitted and being spread thin, and to the point where, you know, like I said, I'm not sleeping 8 hours, or I'm not, you know, feeling nourished. And I think helpful resources on campus for me have been my Commons Dean. She doubles as my posse mentor, so she knows me extremely well, a little too well. And which is great though, because she's able to tell me like, what are you doing? Like, why are you going from this event to this one, and you have no time to breathe? Like, you need to cancel one of these things. And having someone around you and having that connection with someone who can see you and call you out on it is really important. And I think when you become that person too, it's important to like give and take, right? So like Anne Hansen, who's my dean, will do that for me, but I will do that to friends too, right? Be like, no, like Winston, like that fourth class, like I don't know.
You're right.
So I don't know. I think that goes back to building that community. Like you need to be in spaces where you're comfortable telling people that, like, hey, I care about you, and like you do a lot on this campus that fourth class probably will not serve you. And I think other helpful resources are, of course, just I don't know. I think there have been many ways in which I've been able to streamline a lot of the stuff that I do by talking to people. Like I'll see Tiff, and I'll be like, hey Tiff, like I'm working on this project, and she'll be like, oh, so and so's working on that same thing, and it's like maybe not that's like an exact example, but it's happened, right? And being able to connect to other students, because you're right, I think students here feel such an immense pressure to always be doing something, we're supposed to always be producing something, right? Creating something. And I think that goes back to like our American-ness culture, United States in culture, because American is weird. But we have this need to like produce, to make, to like always, we almost like frown upon just being, just sitting and not doing anything, or not being productive. And I think students sometimes step on each other's toes in that process. There are so many ways in which we can collaborate. If there was a better way to communicate and streamline, again, building a better community when we're aware of what we're doing and ways in which we can collaborate and connect, we would be doing a lot less, like in terms of coordination and organization, but we would be doing so much more in terms of, I don't know, programming, building community, having activities that have more meaning. And I think that, I don't know, I think, is it just the human condition? I don't know. But I do think like talking to people, seeing how people are actually doing, what are they actually involved in, and building those connections has really helped me kind of step back from things that maybe don't, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but kind of being intentional with my scheduling, or being intentional with what I engage in, and having other people call me out also in that process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Any last questions or words? Thanks, Gabby, for sharing.
Thank you, everyone.